Hey y'all, it's Gennie. You're joining us for week 8 of the legislative wrap-up. Okay, so we are on week 8. Learns was in the House this week. I'm calling this week vote for Learns or get wrecked by the governor. But that will make sense in a minute. Or if you've been reading our
It's the
content.
first time I've heard, just for context, like this, we didn't talk about that.
No, I just vote for it or get wrecked. It'll make sense, I promise. So Learns was up in House Committee this week. That was on Tuesday, and we'll get into the details in a second. But what we do want to celebrate is that the educators who showed up at the Capitol on Tuesday really stole the show, in my opinion. There were hundreds of educators from towns like Bauxite, Russellville, Wynne, Rogers, Bryant, Cabot, Searcy, Mountain View, Nettleton, West Memphis, Springdale, Stuttgart, Pine Bluff, North Little Rock, Bradford, Sherwood, Ozark, Dardanelle, Conway, Paris, and more. So shout out to those incredible educators that took time off to come make their voices heard. We talk about this in our conversation with Justin, Hannah's former teacher, that a theme emerged, which was that hey, these educators do need support. These public schools do need support, especially for kids with special needs and kids with disabilities and kids who have IEPs. The best way to do that is to invest more in public schools rather than siphoning public dollars away from public schools to vouchers to pay for kids to go to private school. Let's see, we're going to kind of whiz through this. One interesting thing that happened, the committee bumped the vote to the next day. Educators got there, but the first 3 hours of committee was dedicated just to questions by House members. They seemed much more prepared, I think, because they had time to digest the language as compared to their Senate colleagues, and also had a lot more questions because they had gotten public feedback and stakeholder feedback. So the public was not allowed to testify until around 2:30, I think, that afternoon, and it lasted until after 9 p.m. And to the chair's credit, Representative Evans, he said that, hey, we're going to sit here and listen to every single person that has signed up that wants to say their piece. So credit to him for doing that, and for the committee for staying and listening.
I also want to, just same point. I just want to mention that a lot of other chairs would cut people off and not give them an opportunity to finish their statement. He was very gracious with everyone who testified. And not only did they have 5 minutes, he often let them go a minute or two over just to get their last few sentences out.
5 minutes really felt so long compared to, to the 1 to 2
Compared to
minutes.
1 minute, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that was wonderful. It was wonderful because
Yeah.
people really did get to say what they had planned to say.
94 people signed up that morning.
Yeah, that's incredible. So educators really were the ones who shined on Tuesday. What was not super shiny, in our opinion, was what we heard throughout the week, which was reports on abuse of power. So one thing we want to talk about is that we heard about a superintendent who we ultimately spoke with. His name is Jordan Frizzell. He's the superintendent of Star City, which is in East Arkansas. And the week before, I think we mentioned that Senator Brian Davis kind of, I guess, waded into what she thought was an inappropriate approval of the superintendent to allow his educators to attend Senate committee meeting last week. Frizzell was well within his rights as a superintendent to allow them personal leave. These teachers went to represent their particular district with the AEA, which is the Teachers Association for the state. And there was some back and forth on social media about that. Well, Frizzell issued a statement to the public about, how he did not break any school policies. And we were able to have a conversation with him, and it was really sobering because he has been kind of the fall guy for Learns, the public example, if you will, that if you speak out as a public administrator or a superintendent, public school superintendent, that you will be punished. You will be reprimanded. There will be punitive action taken. And that was very public because of what Senator Brian Davis did last week. And in talking with him, he expressed how shocked he was. He was saddened by it because to him, this is not political. To him, it's very personal. He is a homegrown Star City boy. Like, he went to that school, he graduated from there, he has taught there, and now he's the superintendent. His whole family is from there. And in his opinion, it's his job to communicate with his community members how this bill will impact them, how it will impact their school district. And he said it's his job to do that. And so he's going to say the things that he likes about the bill, and he's going to say the things that he doesn't like about the bill. And he does like some things about the bill. But the things that he doesn't like, he was scolded for publicly and then threatened essentially by a state leader. And so we found that really egregious and abhorrent, and we told you about that. But it was really nice to connect with him and hear from him, himself in his own words, that again, it's the opposite of politics for him, that teachers are fighting for their public schools. And in his view, that is an educational purpose, and was, absolutely worthy of allowing these educators to attend committee last week. So we just want to say hats off to Superintendent Frizzell, who is a great example of, what it means to stand up for what's right, and to not be silenced, even in the face of bullies and state leaders who are trying to intimidate you. Thoughts on that, Hannah? Anything you want to add?
I just want to say I love our educators, and I'm proud of everyone who showed up, and thank you for not being silent, because this is unprecedented, right? Like, having our educators being silenced by the governor's office and by a legislator, publicly online, and being threatened. It's wild.
It is wild. And it didn't just end there. That was like the tip of the iceberg. And so we were able to dive in a little bit and view some of what was beneath the surface of that iceberg as it pertains to abuse of power. And we found out this week that the arm twisting, the public pressure, the coercion about being opposed to the LEARNS Act wasn't just directed at public school administrators. It's also been directed at legislators. And so, we have said all along that the issues that we have with teacher pay are not necessarily partisan issues. There are plenty of Republican legislators that have communicated what they don't like about this bill, how it will impact their communities, especially rural communities and districts. One of those individuals is Representative Jim Wooten of BB, who we've done an interview with before, a Republican and a former, public school football coach. And we got a report from Representative Wooten. He joined us on the Capitol steps on Tuesday in a lovely bipartisan effort of support for public school teachers. And he communicated with groups of educators that other members of the legislature have reached out to Representative Wooten to say that they have been threatened by the governor's office. Actually, he did not name the governor's office. I think that was implied, but we don't want to actually put words into his mouth that he didn't say. So he said a poll was circulated amongst legislators asking how they would vote on LEARNS. And that was also confirmed by Representative Carr, who had also told a constituent that they knew that 20 or so House members would vote no on LEARNS, which was the case today. And Representative Wooten went on to say that, he heard that that funding would be withheld from members' state districts, their House districts, if they vote against LEARNS. And that they're terrified. They're terrified of losing funding and appropriations for their districts. So if that is not an abuse of power, I don't know what is. The LEARNS related threats just seem to keep growing, or rather keep coming to light. And so if anybody has a tip on that, you can always send it to us and we'll dig into it. There was some back and forth on social media. A senator said, hey, there's no way that happened, Senator Jonathan Dismayne. So either Senator Jonathan Dismayne is lying or Representative Wooten is lying. I don't want to accuse anybody of lying, but I don't think both of those things can be true at the same time. So as the 94th General Assembly plows ahead and LEARNS is kind of almost pretty much done. It goes to the governor's desk. I think there are still big concerns that the Sanders administration in particular is pressuring legislators to toe not even a party line, but to toe her administration's line, period. And the arm twisting is meant to silence, it's meant to bully, and it's meant to, force approval of these policies that she has promised to the nation, not just to Arkansas, that she's communicated nationally. And, thank God that Representative Wooten was willing to speak the truth to that. And we appreciate it and applaud his transparency and his integrity in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely has stood out since the beginning of this whole conversation as being right there with teachers, and we all support it. And I think the bill has to go back to the Senate to be concurred before it goes.
Yes, you are right. That's correct, because there were amendments added in the House. Yes,
not that we have enough people in the Senate to not concur. Anyway.
Yeah, that's right. So thankfully, the House did add some amendments. I mean, to Hannah's point, they're not substantive amendments in our opinion. There's a few tweaks here and there, but it does go back to the Senate for them to re-sign off on, which they will, and then it will go to the governor's desk. Yeah. So when I said, vote for Lawrence or get wrecked, that's what I was talking about. I think that there's more to pick at this. I think there's more to come on this, hey, who's bullying whom, and who's digging into what, and are people doing things that are not ethical or legal, even, dare I ask the question. So yeah, again, if you have a tip or know of somebody who's been approached by somebody from the governor's administration or the office of the attorney general, we would like to know about that. Hannah, do you want to talk about the other things that happen that are non-LEARNs related?
Yeah, I have a list. We're gonna start with Senate Bill 270. I think this is probably the second largest thing that happened this week in the legislature. Partly because of the contents of the bill, but partly because of the conversation that this bill kind of brought up on the Senate floor earlier this week. But anyway, Monday it was in committee, and right off the bat, I feel like I mentioned Senator Clark Tucker a lot on here, but he's the only person in Senate Judiciary that will go line by line on a bill and be like, this is why you can't do this because I'm a lawyer and I know the law. It's very helpful. Anyway,
it is really helpful to have one actual attorney in a judiciary committee. I would say that.
And so he starts going line by line, and right off the bat he's pointing out issues such as there's a missing sentence. I think in my notes I had sloppy drafting, but honestly that's not true. It's sloppy proofing, because I'm not gonna blame the drafting people who have to draft so many bills. The point of the committee process is to read these bills and find errors like that on top of the other things that we amend. But one of the easiest things that you can do in committee is run an amendment that fixes a technical error, which is what this was. But instead of doing that, Peyton decided to push for the bill to get through Senate and then go to House to get amended there. Does that sound familiar? So that kind of brought, a lot of conversations about all of that. Philosophically, this bill is bad. It would be the largest, it would criminalize being transgender, basically, in the state of Arkansas. And that is a point that Senator Clark Tucker made on the floor on Wednesday. But before we get to Wednesday, let's go back to Monday. I have a lot of things to say. Okay, so on Monday, we had some people come testify, and the Family Council, which we've talked about on this show before, they're the largest conservative valued group in the state. They're always there testifying for the abortion bills, you know, all of the things. And they spoke in support of this bill because they said it helped kids. And then I think my favorite moment is when a representative from Intransitive Arkansas got up to speak following the family council and called the family council out because we all know that this bill does not actually help kids. It's not going to protect kids. All it does is criminalize being transgender in a public space. But this person from Intransitive called out family council for having members who had been accused of sexually assaulting minors. The one in particular, Josh Duggar, who has been convicted, right, at this point, I think.
And as Senator Payton mentioned, there are a lot of heterosexuals who are deviant, and we have a lot of those here in Arkansas. So if the purpose of this is to protect children even farther, I hope that you take a step to that, and this bill is not that. There are no cases of transgender people harming children in bathrooms. It has been asked, Senator Payton mentioned, he can't name one single instance, right? But there are multiple cases of Baptist pastors using their powers to assault children. Considering that the majority of you all in this committee are Baptists, and you want to protect children, I would urge you to do some work around ending sexual violence against children at the hands of their fathers, grandfathers, uncles, and pastors. A good starting point is the 205-page document showing the sexual assault of over 700 people by members of the Southern Baptist Convention. The next place to look is the Family Research Council, who testified in supporting this bill, considering they have several members accused of sexual assault, starting with Josh Duggar from Arkansas. Though you might want to leave Senator Hester out of those conversations, since he advocated to fire the police chief who released the documents that led to the arrest and conviction of Josh Duggar, accused of sexually assaulting 5 girls.
Yeah. Wild times.
Wow.
There are a lot of photos of a lot of Arkansas politicians with Josh Duggar.
With the Duggar, yeah.
Well, there are a lot of Duggars, to be fair.
Well,
but
yeah.
also, yes,
but I mean, like the Duggar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In this scenario. Anyway, I know I probably rambled a lot. I hope you followed everything that I said. But now we have finished with Monday. I'm not going to get into all of the testimony. We all have heard what they say. I will say Payton was very uncomfortable. He never once said the term transgender until he was basically backed into a corner and forced to say transgender. Instead, he went with the choose to use the wrong restroom phrase. People who choose to use the wrong restroom. What is wrong restroom? According to the bill, you know, it's all based on.
I feel like we heard like too much about people's personal experiences using the other, like we
oh
actually
my God.
had to listen to John Payton talk about using a restroom and have like a women's rest. The whole thing was very upsetting to me.
Yeah, and I mean, like on the Senate floor, Clark Tucker was like, I'm so embarrassed that I even have to have this conversation on the Senate floor because now, because of this bill, you're forcing me to like go through these real life scenarios that could happen. Where like, you know, a mom and a mom is now a criminal or you know, like just the unintended consequences.
Yeah, like you go in to wash your hands and well, okay, now I'm somehow committed a crime because the kid just walked in. It's just
right. And you know why they don't care about that not being tight? Because they know, like in their heads, this bill is for one group of people. Despite what they say, it's for one group of people. John Payton said, like, I know this is only going to affect one group of people and not all the others. Like, he said that.
I'm trying to eliminate some instances But I have to admit, this bill does not eliminate all instances.
Anyway, on the Senate floor, Tucker was the first to get up to speak against, and he did his philosophical viewpoints, like this is why I'm against it, and then starts he kind of like puts the bill down. Like it was very dramatic, like very and I mean that in like the best possible way, dramatic, like I felt like
John Grisham movie.
Yes. But he kind of puts the bill down and he's like, okay, so this moment forward, I'm not talking about this bill. Like, I'm not a Democrat. This is just like how we should work as a body, and like how none of us are doing our jobs, because I'm sitting here with a bill that has all of these issues that I have laid out that had nothing to do with my political standpoint, that were just like needed to be fixed, easy fixes. And it's on the Senate floor to be voted out. How? And I think that, to sum up kind of like his whole point, vetting bills is not partisan. I think that was like the moment in the speech where it kind of like all came together. He even goes on to be like, we're not here to make political stances, like so on and so forth. And he asked that the bill be pulled down. Eventually, Senator Hickey gets up, does the same thing, says, we're better than this. Arkansas, like, it's week 8, but we're better than this. Arkansans deserve better than this. Why are we doing this? It's not the first time. Anyway, it started a long conversation. I think that was all I had on that. I think that's it. Well, there's other things, but like on 270, that's it.
Yeah, I want to talk about, I think this is on your list too, Hannah. I want to mention that House Bill 1419 was went through Senate today, Senate state agencies, and you probably remember us talking about that Senate bill that was the unconstitutional constitutional amendment, where it was going to require signatures from 50 Arkansas counties for citizens to pass, community-led ballot initiatives, and really increasing the burden on anybody who wants to do a ballot initiative, which is guaranteed by the Arkansas Constitution and a right that the people have in this state. But the problem was that was a constitutional amendment, and the window had already closed for the legislature to refer those to the 2024 ballot. And so this got filed, 1419, which is pretty much the same bill. It just doesn't use the language saying it's an amendment to the Constitution. It's the same requirement. Hey, you got to get signatures from X amount of people in 50 counties, which is up from 15, which is the current requirement. So a broad, jump in burden for signatures. But it doesn't say anything about amending the Constitution. It just says, hey, the people who are processing these ballot initiatives, in order for them to go on to the ballot, they have to be from 50 counties and have X, Y, and Z. So it's very clear that it's like a trick that they're trying to pull. They're like, there's some tricks up my sleeve. Just take out constitutional amendment and we're good. And they like actually argued that in committee today. Like Missy Orpin, who's the executive director of Common Ground, she spoke against the other Senate bill, and she said like, hey, this is the same bill. It's still unconstitutional. Clark Tucker weighed in, hey, this is unconstitutional. It violates the language of the Constitution, blah, 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 blah. And the chair of the committee, Blake Johnson, was like, this is not a constitutional amendment. It's a statute.
Yeah. I was going to say, can you be Misty and I'll be Blake for a second?
Yeah, she was like, this violates the language of the Constitution.
So are you saying it's a constitutional amendment?
Yes.
No, are you saying it's a constitutional amendment?
Yes, I think it's a constitutional amendment.
No. That's what you believe. He said that word for word.
Yeah, and then he said it's a statute.
It's a statute. We drafted it as a statute, which means it's not going to change.
Yeah. So I think if you just like the takeaway is if you just like believe enough in your heart that it's true, then it's true and you can pass a law about it apparently, which is also what and we can move on from this, the fake fraud, not real ballot box bill is also about, which would ban the fraudulent absentee ballot drop boxes to protect our election integrity. But like plot twist, we don't even have those in Arkansas. So how can you be committing fraud with absentee ballot drop boxes if we don't have those in the state? It's going to scramble your brain if you try to think about that too hard.
And we can't even pass the bill as is because as it's written, it would confuse like legal terms because we store absentee ballots in boxes.
Yeah. So in order to not criminalize our actual county clerks who store absentee ballots in boxes, they had to pull the bill and amend it to define what these fraudulent, non-existent boxes look like, which will be hard because they don't exist in Arkansas. I mean, they exist elsewhere, so I'm sure they'll find a schematic for it somewhere, but
yeah. And this, this doesn't have anything to do with the bill, but we're on two bills that were in state agencies. So I just got to bring up the drama at the end of state agencies today before we move on. So I don't know what the bill was. It's not a bill that we were really following. We're two people. We're not keeping track of every single bill. But it's one that obviously Senator Flowers had some questions on, had some concerns about. And typically when senators have bills, like it's specifically in committee, like a bill that they want to go on record for like voting no on, they'll do a voice vote and then the committee member will request a roll call and then the clerk will go through and like, call out everyone's name, the process, call out the name, call out the vote. And then we have a record, like an actual record and not just a voice vote. And I guess the committee was running a little over, like, maybe 10 minutes. It's not like the Senate doesn't get started late all the time. But anyway, as he we'll play the video. But
yes, legislative rewind.
We'll play the video. Anyway, as he's taking the vote, you can hear Senator Flowers say roll call as he's picking up the gavel. So like before and then he gavels and he says thank you, and she keeps saying like roll call, and he says no and then just turns his microphone off.
Senator Dodson as amended. Motion by Senator Dodson as amended, second by Senator Payton. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Thank you. We are adjourned. It's passed. We are adjourned.
I've asked for a roll call.
We are adjourned.
So rude. Walks out and leaves the rest of the committee there. It was crazy.
She was not happy, and and that was right because procedurally that was wrong. Like he needed to follow procedure. She had a right to be heard as a member and ask for the roll call. And it doesn't matter.
Really rude. Yeah, and he was also really rude to the person, like I don't know who they were. Again, like not a bill that we're paying attention to, but a member, like only one person had signed up to speak for or against. I don't remember which. But was like, you need to make it quick because we're on a schedule and we're past it already. Like to the person testifying. I don't know if you've ever, like, you'll see the video of Blake Johnson, but he's not a very kind and like I don't want to have a conversation with him because of the way that he treats people. Like I don't want to ask him a question. Like,
well, and what's funny about all of this, maybe it's karmic, but the Senate started like 20 minutes after they got there. So it started.
They always do.
And I also heard, I heard that he did apologize to Senator Flowers.
Well, and they'll
maybe he should also do that publicly. I don't know, just
right. And I mean, like if she really wanted to be like if it was like a bill that was, you know, a controversial bill, she could like call it back to committee and like expunge the vote and do all of that stuff. But
one more thing that's like not really pertinent to policy that I want to mention about that same committee meeting is that twice we heard from the chair, Blake Johnson, and also from a bill sponsor, Senator Dotson, that we are not a democracy. We are a republic. And I just want to set the record straight for anyone who does not remember American history or civics class, that we are both. We are a representative democracy, that our representatives are in fact democratically elected. Ergo, we are a democracy. So a lot of times you will hear people kind of on the extreme right who are trying to erode the ballot initiative process or anything that pertains to direct democracy. Like, we vehemently believe in people power in the state of Arkansas. Like, that is something that the voters time and time again are like, do not screw with our right to the ballot. Like, that is ours. Get your grubby legislative hands off of it. But the legislators are like, no, power and control only for us.
Clark, and, again, I'm sorry, I gotta like give it out to Clark again, because on on 1419 in committee, he said this bill has nothing to do with giving rural counties a voice and everything to do with us asserting power and control.
Yeah, like, and Hannah and I talked about this later. Like, just tell the truth. Like, just get up there. Somebody have the guts to get up there and be like, we don't want the people of Arkansas to put issues on the ballot. We don't think the people should be able to write laws. But instead, they won't say that. And they keep coming up with these really lame like excuses and arguments like, oh, this protects us from the Constitution being amended. Like, you're literally amending the Constitution and arguing that the Constitution should not be amended. It's just nonsensical and like kind of comical, but also very sad at this point in time. But also, I was very saddened to hear two members of this body say that we're not a democracy. Like, what? No, go, like, let's do 8th grade over. We can get you a voucher. Like, let's do it. It'll be great. I think there's a voucher for that coming. You can get some extra curriculum. Like, I'm sure even the Mike Beebe curriculum says that we're a democracy. I'll look into that. Like, I just, what? Oh, is there anything else we need to talk about?
I will say the other excuse for this particular bill was that Arkansans are just not smart enough to understand what they're voting on.
Oh yeah,
so
they're really just looking out for us because we're not smart enough to read the ballot and know what it is. That was really insulting. Who said that? Senator Payton? I think it was Senator Payton.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I think it was Payton. It was like that or Dotson, one of the two. They're basically the same.
I think it was Payton. I think it was Senator Payton.
It sounds like a Payton comment.
Well, I think quickly, wasn't there something about a monument?
Yes. Okay. Sorry. We're almost done with my list. I'll end it with like a good one, like the only win we had. Not the only win, but like the only petty win.
Those are worth their weight in gold.
They are. So Senate Bill 307. This is Senator Hammer's bill. So basically, it's a bill that would allow the Secretary of State to erect a monument, or like, I don't know, it's not the Secretary of State. It would be funded through like a private fund. But basically a bill that would allow a monument to be built on the like Capitol grounds, so like the people's house, a monument for all of the unborn babies in Arkansas.
Okay.
So, you know, all those aborted Arkansans.
Or miscarried Arkansans even.
Right. But specifically we know who they are, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we know what this is about. People who spoke against it said this is really mean. To make, women who like have gone through miscarriages or like abortions for whatever reason to have to pass such a monument anytime they're at the Capitol, not to mention anything that is on the Capitol, just, just common sense. It should probably be something that the majority of the state, or like the 100% of the state, like agrees with, or like it should do no harm. Like, should do no harm.
But Hannah, we're a republic.
Right. We're a republic with a Ten Commandments monument that you can't read because it was done terribly. The second
I think there's a voucher for that too. I'm just gonna ride this joke until it's not funny anymore. Somebody in the background already did it. Already there. Not funny.
Okay. So that's really all I have to say about that. It's gross. It's Senator Hammer. Not surprising that he's the sponsor. But anyway, this is the last thing I want to talk about, and I actually have a lot to say about it. So I think earlier, I don't remember which week, but we talked about Senate Bill 125, which was Dan Sullivan's, like, we're just going to make all of college campuses freedom of speech zones, meaning like we can cause disruptions inside of like classrooms and hallways and things. Current law is that, outside is public space, inside is
this was another tricks up the sleeve bill, right?
Yeah, I'm getting there. Yeah. So this bill, yes, it had been in committee, but it had not been on the agenda. So Sullivan, he first presented it, and then pulls it and like is like, we're gonna have conversations. Like, I'm gonna have conversations. The man goes to 3 colleges and calls it a listening tour. Firstly, I believe he didn't specifically say in his testimony what schools he did visit, but I kind of picked up it was probably UCA, U of A, and the Bowen Law School, I think he said or had mentioned. And he had these conversations, I guess some over the weekend, and had alluded to these people, to these educators, that he was not going to run the bill this week and he would be running it next week. And then I think this was Monday morning. Was this Monday or was this Tuesday? I don't know.
I don't know what time
it was. Wednesday. It was Wednesday. Sorry, I'm going backwards. It was Wednesday. It was the day that they voted on the Learns Act in the committee. Anyway, that's how I'm like keeping up with the week, is like when the vote took place. So he decides to run it. And thankfully, a couple people who he had these conversations with just happened to be in the audience. I don't know if they like kind of suspected, but the first person who got up was very much like, I'm not prepared to speak on this right now because I was told it would not be running because it was just amended and we haven't had an opportunity to read the amendments. Again, sound familiar? It's a pattern in the Senate right now. It's just, I don't know why. So anyway, these educators get up and they start completely derailing everything that Dan Sullivan said when he's introducing the bill again. Dan said, yeah, I spoke to students who were super on board with this and they all agree that this should be a policy. And all this bill does is make schools write policies. And at one point he's like, I don't want to tell the school what the policy should be, but like within the bill, it like says what the policy should be anyway. So we have like 2 people from UCA come and speak. I think there was someone from CARC, and then also, I think that was it. I think those were the only people. Every single one of them called him out for lying to them, misleading them, and like none of them were prepared. Anywho, the last person who goes is another representative from UCA, and he straight up says, I was in the room with you when we were listening to these students, and that's not what they said. They said that this bill would not help any of the issues that they're currently dealing with. And Dan's response to that was, we just heard two different things. And then at some point, I think, throughout questioning, he gets a little snippy with Greg Letting because Greg couldn't make it to when he was at U of A because, of course, Greg always has to be available to go to the U of A campus when you're in Fayetteville, because that's just like his day job, I guess. Anyway, he got snippy about that because Greg asked, like, how many students were there? How many did you talk to? Like, how many actually agree with you? I want to know, like, the numbers. And I don't know, Dan Sullivan was just like, you're misunderstanding. Like, I know this isn't representative of like all of the students, but the ones I spoke to, he just gaslights and gaslights and gaslights. But anyway, that was a really long way of explaining that the bill failed. It didn't go anywhere. He failed to get the majority. One member just decided not to vote on it, and that's all you need.
Yay, democracy. The democratic process prevails. Oh gosh. Okay. So that was week 8. I think that, as Hannah said, Lawrence has to go back to the Senate real quick, but should be no, rigmarole there. And I guess now we just wait and see what else happens. What other policy is going to come down the pipeline? We're waiting for criminal justice. We're waiting for tax cuts.
I lied.
All that good stuff.
There's one more I'm going to mention.
Oh,
and
yes.
I'm only going to mention it because of Stubblefield's comments today. I don't know the bill number off the top of my head, but it's basically a bill that kind of like supports child labor. Yeah, it's that one.
That was
it's that one. So it basically, like, currently you have to get a permit. I don't know the process. Like, I think parents have to be involved, the school has to be involved, I think, at some point. I don't know the process, but there's a process for like a child under 16 to get a work permit. For whatever.
Yeah, because like nothing has ever gone wrong in our country with employing children.
We're literally, like, Arkansas just had issues with that with Tyson. Like, and then they're like, well, this will fix that. And we're like, no, this makes it worse. Basically, Stubblefield gets up and his opening statement is, hold on, I have to read it. I got it perfect on Twitter. So like, I have to read it word for word. So give me one moment. But oh man, it's the best way, if you're gonna get up and speak for a bill, I think this is how you should start your sentence. He said, listen, I don't have a lot to go on here. Except for the way I was raised. And we all worked. That was his whole point. We got to get these kids out of the basements. He said,
I mean, those girls are not going to learn to rope on their own. May as well get paid to learn young and do it right.
Yeah. Anyway, that really is the last thing I want to talk about, just because it was absurd.
Neither here nor
there. It is absurd because it passed, but anywho.
Yeah, so if anyone's thinking about running for office, I think it would be a good time to consider that.
Any teachers out there who are afraid that public education is crumbling, and you care about your kids, but you also want to be able to eat, I don't know. Well, don't run for office because you need a job. That's a bad reason, but that just wasn't what I meant to say at all. None of it. I'm tired. I'm like using my hands so much in this video, and it's because I'm so tired.
We are sleepy. Okay, well, let's leave it there then, and we'll go eat and take a nap and join us back here next week for week 9. Until then, have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.